It was Ava's first day at Angro Academy, and she was already enduring her second lecture about responsibility. Her father, Sam Turner, the head of security for a prominent human diplomatic delegation, was dropping her off at the prestigious school. As a private contractor who ran his own security firm and a single father, Sam often treated Ava as if she were one of his team members, briefing her on mission parameters and rules to follow. "Do your best and don't cause trouble," he instructed, his eyes constantly scanning the shuttles around them as they flew. "You're the first human to attend a United Galactic Assembly School, and this one is among the best. Pay attention to everything around you. I want to know anything of interest. Kids overhear things and pick up valuable intel at home, so stay focused." He glanced down at Ava, noticing she was staring absent-mindedly out the window. His tone softened. "I know this is your third high school." She folded her arms, prompting him to correct himself. "Fourth high school. I have to move around a lot for work, and I know that's not easy on you." A shuttle sped past them, causing her father to become instantly alert, his hand hovering above a small button. The moment passed, and he visibly relaxed. "The other kids might try to get information from you, as well if they're smart. I'm sure you remember how to handle that." He glanced at her, waiting until she nodded once. "Good." As their shuttle arrived at the academy, someone was waiting at the gates, waving them over to an empty spot. The headmaster greeted her father, and after polite yet swift introductions, hurried Ava inside. She glanced back to see her father watching until the doors closed behind her. Inside, the headmaster immediately began a tour of the school's facilities, explaining the history of Angro Academy. He detailed how the school was created to educate the children of diplomats from the United Galactic Assembly. The headmaster, an 8-foot-tall, shaggy blue alien named Tillis, was the first Langbar Ava had ever seen. She struggled to focus on his words as he preached about the benefits of a homogenized education. "You see," Headmaster Tillis continued, "by bringing you all together, you can learn from and about each other. Here at Angro, we pride ourselves on creating the diplomats of the future." The towering alien looked at her expectantly. Like any 13-year-old who hadn't been listening, she nodded cautiously in agreement. It worked, and they moved on as he talked about the standardized tests they would need to take. Several hours of testing later, Ava was exhausted and frustrated. How was she supposed to know about the history and politics of people her entire race had been unaware of until 18 months ago? The test had started easily enough with basic math and simple puzzles based on shapes and colors. Even the second round, which the headmaster insisted was optional, had been manageable. But with each subsequent visit from the headmaster, the questions became increasingly difficult. How was she supposed to know who or what a Grawl was, or understand their political difficulties with something called a Goran? The headmaster returned once again, quickly looking over her test results. "My goodness, you've finished another one," he said, tapping on the screen mounted to the desk in front of her. A small yellow symbol appeared. 73%, that is exceptional, especially for a species so new to the galactic stage. Headmaster Tillis exclaimed, his shaggy blue fur quivering with enthusiasm. Ava remained poker-faced. The test had been a binary multiple choice, and she had simply chosen the answers that seemed funniest. Before she could respond, the large Langbar turned and walked out of the room. Ava glanced back at the screen, fully expecting another ridiculous test to appear. "Come along, Miss Turner," Headmaster Tillis said, struggling with her name's pronunciation. "I hope I'm getting that right. It is time for lunch. I believe your species follows a standard schedule, and I know the culinary staff have prepared something special for your first day. With so many species attending our school, we must be fully aware of every dietary requirement." Ava stood, smoothing her uniform and casually throwing her school bag over her shoulder, then followed the giant alien as he marched through the halls. It took 3 of her steps for every one of his, and as he walked quickly, she was nearly jogging to keep up. The headmaster stopped abruptly, and she barely avoided colliding with him. He turned and looked down at her. "Now then, this is the cafeteria. It is quite boisterous and will no doubt present many new things for you to see. Naturally, you will also be new to the students beyond these doors, so please pay no mind to the attention you will inevitably receive." The doors slid open, and Headmaster Tillis led her into the large hall. Ava trotted along behind him to a large table where several other aliens in matching robes sat facing rows of tables filled with students. There was a large seat at the center of the teacher's table, and she winced when she saw the small empty seat beside it. A myriad of faces watched her, and she held her head high as her father had taught her. She took her seat alongside the headmaster, who engaged the other adults in polite conversation, giving her an opportunity to look around the room. Ava found herself fascinated by the various species present, recognizing a few but finding the vast majority completely alien to her. Her xeno-watching was interrupted when a squat, red lizard-like alien approached and bowed his head. "Ah, Cuisine Master Herc," Headmaster Tillis said. "Do you have the celebratory meal for our new student?" Herc's tongue flickered nervously. "We do have some dishes, but the lexicon of human cuisine is vast and still incomplete." They appear to take the omni in omnivore quite literally. The headmaster seemed a little surprised. "Oh, I see. You've never let a student down before. Do you have anything to show for your efforts?" "Absolutely." The cuisine master puffed out his blue uniformed chest. "We have prepared a selection of celebratory meals suitable for species 368. Tillis held up a hand. "Be rear in. She is a human. We do not number our students. Why don't you bring out what you have? I'm sure our new student will appreciate your efforts." Both of their eyes fell on Ava, and she realized this was one of those instructions disguised as a question that adults loved so much. She nodded, and Herc hurried off. The headmaster seemed satisfied with her response and turned back to his concern over one of his staff failing a task. "I'm terribly sorry about this. Cuisine Master Herc is normally so dependable." A nearby teacher joined the conversation, leaving Ava once again ignored. She sat silently, waiting to see what food would arrive, hoping it might be pizza. The side door slid open, and a procession of blue uniformed aliens marched out, each carrying several plates of food. Ava slid backward in her chair as the dishes were laid out before her. She risked a glance at the headmaster, whose mouth opened and closed wordlessly. The student body had fallen silent, several now standing to see the banquet laid out before the strange new student. Cuisine Master Herc stood before their table, arms folded across his chest. "As I was trying to say, the variety of food they eat was my concern. I simply wanted to ask the human," he struggled to recall the word, "which of her species' numerous cuisines she follows." Ava's eyebrows were as high as they could go, but her father had always told her that leaders make decisions while fools hesitate. She looked at the array of food and prepared to make a choice. Ava stood and quickly surveyed the plethora of meals before her. There was an entire roast turkey surrounded by vegetables and stuffing. Beside it, she spotted a plate of yuat with injera, an Ethiopian dish that one of her father's old friends used to make. Her eyes darted from bibinka to lax and past the mince pies to a massive bowl of trifle. She then noticed some bon chung and, lifting the plate, she bowed her head to the cuisine master. As Ava began to enjoy her Vietnamese dish, the chefs cleared away the rejected items. Headmaster Tillis glared at Herc, but waved his hands to indicate everyone should return to what they were doing. As Ava happily munched on her lunch, she noticed something out of the corner of her eye. Just before the plate was removed, she hastily grabbed an eclair from a selection of cream cakes. When Cuisine Master Herc caught her eye, she smiled and held up her dessert, unable to thank him as her mouth was full of rice. He winked and promptly turned and left. "What a ridiculous display," Headmaster Tillis said, clearly speaking to the other adults nearby rather than to her. Was that meant to be impressive? Before Ava could swallow and respond, another teacher engaged the headmaster in conversation, leaving her to enjoy her food in peace. After she finished eating, Headmaster Tillis stood. "Shall we meet Mr. Jor at the Hollow Gymnasium? He's in charge of our students' physical health. Strong minds require healthy bodies, as I always say." The large blue alien was already walking, so Ava hastily shoved her water bottle into her bag and fell in behind him. She was growing accustomed to his speed and managed to keep up with a fast walk. As they glided through the corridors, she glanced through the windows of the doors they passed, catching glimpses of the classes in progress. The headmaster was still talking, and she found herself regretting she hadn't grabbed another eclair. After navigating through several turns, they descended 2 flights of stairs. She was directed to one of 5 locker rooms and instructed to exit from the far door once she changed into her athletic apparel. Slumping down on a wooden bench, Ava eagerly began to shed her tailored school uniform. Off came the green and yellow striped tie, the green blazer with the school logo on the front pocket, the yellow shirt, and the emerald trousers. She changed out of the matching shiny green shoes and into her UND suit, shuddering at the cold sensors. Over the skin-tight yellow base layer, she pulled on shorts and a t-shirt of the same emerald green. Messily gathering her long blonde curls into a ponytail, she grabbed her half-empty water bottle. For the next 4 hours, Ava went through a series of physical tests. Her initial enthusiasm quickly waned as boredom set in. The morning exercise routine her father had her follow was more grueling and took only 30 minutes. After throwing the 17th bean bag into a bucket a few meters away, she began to take a step back after each throw, altering the parameters to make the tasks more interesting. Mr. Jor, who was monitoring her biometrics from a separate room, instructed her on the next test requirements. She heard the wet slap of his tentacles approaching and turned to face him, her 50 bean bags now expended. "Well done, young lady," he bubbled happily. "It is quite difficult to get genders right with a new student. Thankfully, your species has 2, which is still one more than necessary but understandable. There are species here with 3, 4, and even 5. Of course, none beat the Jelty with their 17, but they don't school their young, can't move the pods around too much, so it's private tutors in the hatcheries." Ava had no idea what the 4-foot-tall octopus-like alien was saying, so she nodded and waited patiently for him to reach his point. Mr. Jor noticed she was some distance from the target, and she held up her now-empty water bottle to distract him. She had been instructed to stand behind the yellow line when throwing and didn't want to get in trouble on her first day for bending the rules. "Ah, of course, you must require hydration after such prolonged physical exertion." He pointed a tentacle towards the door she had entered through. 3 taps, water, correct? Center tap. Never get that wrong. Ava retrieved her water, sniffing it suspiciously before taking a tentative sip. Relaxing, she took a longer drink, then returned to stand before him, taking small sips as he tapped on the hologym controls. "Now, Ms. Turner, you have performed exceptionally well. I'm a little concerned that your heart rate barely rose. Perhaps it is a weakness of your species. You are slow to adapt physically to strenuous exercise. There are a few species like that. Excellent for energy conservation, of course." She was about to explain the ease of the test when he continued, so she closed her mouth. "As you know, your test results today determine which class you will be placed in. Your intelligence, adaptability, and physical needs are all factored in. We must also accept that some species here are more fragile than others. But you seem sturdy enough." Humans weren't oblivious to the differences in aliens. The Wodo and Arenal had long been part of their alliance before jointly meeting the United Galactic Assembly Exploratory Team. The 4-legged Wodo were reminiscent of centaurs from Earth mythology, and the Arenal wouldn't look out of place in Santa's workshop. Ava had known members of both species growing up and through her parents' work. She was very aware that she had to be gentle with both species, and she assumed there would be aliens here both weaker and stronger than herself. Mr. Jor slapped 3 of his tentacles together. "Now then, on to the final test." He slid away across the floor, his undulating tentacles carrying him surprisingly quickly. Anrock Academy was a school for future leaders, diplomats, and politicians. Headmaster Tillis had experienced a range of emotions as he watched the new student, Ava, tearing through holographic opponents like they were mere playthings. His initial horror had quickly turned to anger upon discovering that Mr. Jor had not only encouraged her but had activated full-contact combat mode. Headmaster Tillis had been forced to apologize profusely to Ava Jacobs for the actions of the hologym teacher and had insisted on calling her father, Sam Jacobs, to collect her. He brought everyone to his office to explain to the parental figure that such an incident would never happen again. The school could ill afford another scandal or lawsuit. Allowing Ava time to shower and change, he used the opportunity to express his disappointment in Mr. Jor. The strange tentacled Orin seemed more upset that his experiment had ended than the fact that he could have potentially endangered a student. All of those emotions were now gone, replaced by an all-consuming dread as Headmaster Tillis stared into the cold, impassive eyes of Sam Jacobs. The Langbar continued to apologize, concerned that his guest had said nothing so far. His fur was not even standing on end in alarm at hearing his child had been endangered. "So you see, Mr. Jacobs," he gestured to the pale octopod in the corner. "Mr. Jor is deeply sorry for his actions. I promise you this will be brought before the Academy's governing body for review, and he will be punished appropriately." The headmaster swallowed hard. The human had simply stared at him as he spoke, and even now he felt the expectant gaze drawing more words forth as he babbled to fill the silence. "Obviously, if you feel you cannot trust us, we understand. Should you no longer wish Ava to attend, Mr. Jor cried out, "She's a prodigy. We need her to beat Gribber Military Academy in the end-of-year games." "Mr. Jor," the headmaster exclaimed, "you wish to further endanger the child? I will not allow it." Sam slowly turned his head to look at his daughter, who sat by the door to the office. She gave him an apologetic look and shrugged. He returned his attention to the large blue hairy headmaster. "So, she's not in trouble?" Mr. Tillis was taken aback by the question. "No, of course not. She's a victim of teacher misconduct. Why would she be in trouble?" "And she's not injured?" the human asked, keeping his voice calm and even. "No, thank the stars," the headmaster said. Certain he'd explained all of this at some length. "Fortunately, I came to collect her as the physical test should have been over, and she had not been returned to my care. But she could have been injured, and that is what we are here to discuss." "In a hologym?" Sam raised a single eyebrow. "No hard light has ever killed anyone. It can't generate enough force. The most it could have done is give her a few bruises, maybe break a rib if she was careless." He turned to look at his daughter. "Did you get hit?" She quickly shook her head, and he gave her a single nod of approval. "I don't understand why you called me away from my work for this." The Langbar realized that the humans might lack the technology to generate a suitably strong hard light field. "Perhaps our hologyms differ. We have, unfortunately, had several casualties during training and one fatality.